Hello, welcome to another episode of The Doctor Within, where the doctor in here is better than all of those doctors out there. Tonight's topic, turning off the check engine light. And that's about how the absence of healing in our broken healthcare system is a really big problem. So I'm John Rigdon. I'm a nutrition expert, self-styled, I guess. Been doing this for 12 years now, and it's really helped me, and it's helped people I care about. I've got Charlie Ray here. He's the owner of Nature's Outlet and the owner and founder of Amplified Naturals, which is a really cool supplement company. They make just really dynamic, unique supplements. And I've got Dr. Pat Kennedy, who runs Kennedy Health and Wellness, and he's also a professional actor in commercials and things like that. He's really good at that.
Yeah. And I'm old because
you're also you're a big time athlete, right?
Well, it used to be, but I've been doing it 32 years. And you've been 12 years. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really am old. Yeah.
How old are you?
34.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm 38. So,
yeah, you started early. Good for you.
So guys, I mean, I've got this, so turning off the check engine light, this isn't actually a car, like an automobile podcast. So that could be
I was going to say, I don't have a check engine light. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear where we're going.
Don't you think it would be cool if we had check engine lights? Because you'd be like, it's time to eat, or it's time to sleep. It's time I need some vitamin C. I mean, that
might make things easier. I agree.
People would still ignore them.
Oh, yeah. They would.
Yeah. They would be tapping on it and going, whatever.
So guys, think about this. So say you own a car and your check engine light comes on and you're like, okay, whatever. What does that mean? So you keep driving it, and then these weird smells and sounds are emanating from your engine, and you're like, okay, it's time to take it into the mechanic. So you do that. They look it over. They tell you all these different things are wrong, and it's going to take this much time to fix it and cost this much.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I don't think I'm going to do all of that. I think I want the smells and the sounds to go away, and I want that check engine light off. And so they do that for you, and you keep driving your car, and then a few months later, it just breaks down on you. So luckily, it's just a car, right? But what about when it's yourself? What about when it's your health that we're talking about? And that is a reality for a lot of people.
So what's the question?
All right. So you go into the doctor, and because you don't feel good, you're tired, you don't sleep well, you get out of breath easily. And you go in, and the doctor does all this, runs all these tests on you, and they tell you you're overweight, you're pre-diabetic, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol. They tell you to make some dietary changes, some lifestyle changes. They tell you need to lose some weight, eat healthier, come back in 2 months, and if this hasn't improved, we're going to put you on medications. So you go back in 2 months later without any understanding of what you really needed to do to make these changes, and the situation's gotten worse. So now the doctor wants to put you on medications. What are those medications going to do? They're going to just turn off the check engine light. You're not actually fixing the problem. There's no healing that's taking place. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I know Charlie's probably got a ton of stuff, but I've had patients today, and I wish what you said is true, that the doctor would do all these tests, and then they would come up and say, well, you have this going on, and then, here, make some changes, and then come back in 2 months. That would be incredible. I would love to hear that. But what I hear every day is, I just came from my doctor's office. My blood pressure is up, and he sent a prescription in for me to go get blood pressure medication. And I said, anything else? Yeah. Like, no. Said I had to be on the blood pressure medication. I said, what was your blood pressure last time you went? Well, it was normal. Like, well, why jump into it right away, and I hear that about, statin drugs too, to lower cholesterol. It's like my cholesterol is up and, right away they're going to put him on cholesterol medication. And I said, did they ask you anything else? Nope, just cholesterol levels up. So I got to be on these statin drugs. And I go, well, when cholesterol goes up is when you're stressed out.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? Well, I'm going through a divorce. My child's really sick. Whatever.
Lost my job.
They're having
There's no gas at the gas station.
Right. We're living in a pandemic that's, whether it's true or not true, whatever. People are stressed out. Like, that's a good reason why cholesterol is probably up. How about we get on some fish oil, some
Look at our diet a little bit. Maybe see if we're eating any dietary fiber.
Right.
Are we doing any exercise?
Do all those things and then check later and see if the cholesterol,
how it's going.
Yeah, how's it going? So I don't know how to answer your question, because I don't see what you just said happening out there. I think the prescription pad is rolling.
Well, yeah, that's best case scenario. And I mean, to your point, I think people have that experience, and then, 5 to 10 minutes, you spend 5 to 10 minutes in the doctor's office. That happens. They prescribe something. And then, that doctor moves on, and they have the same eerie experience over and over again throughout their day. I mean, and I'm not saying that's their fault. I'm saying that's the system that we have.
Right. It's a systemic problem. A physician will walk in to an appointment to see a patient, and they'll do this. They'll look at their watch. It's a cue, subconscious cue, that I only have a few moments to take with this situation because I'm under pressure to go hit the next one.
Yeah.
And so, not necessarily trying to be super empathetic to doctors, but that is, ironically, and this is insider information in a sense, because my wife is a physician, and I will at times reflexively defend doctors because my wife's in the profession. But in this case, the observation is a little different, and it is that, some of the black sheep physicians at the HMO, the local HMO, that had to leave, so to speak, it's because they were spending too much time with their patients. They were engaging their patients in trying to be effective.
They're trying to be a good doctor.
And I will tell you that, a physician in an HMO, if they're not hitting certain quotas in terms of time references, patients seen per day, billable hours, more importantly to the HMO, specialist referrals. I mean, because that, if you're going to be a crass, like, reduce it to the business model pieces, it's like the purpose of the general practitioner is a traffic cop to route people to specialists.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real monetization can occur. Now, I will say that's, obviously probably a very inflammatory observation, and, could spark some
might step on a couple toes.
Might step on some toes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the system's broken.
Refer them to the podiatrist. Anyway.
Well, going back to this check engine light analogy, and Dr. Pat, you touched on this. I mean, if they're prescribing medications to lower cholesterol and lower blood pressure, and or maybe some sort of like diabetes medication, I mean, that is turning off a check engine light. That's not solving the problem. I mean, you talked about high cholesterol could be because of all the stresses in their life. And, I think in prior episodes, I don't even know if they were published or not, but we talked about how the stresses of life, your body responds to that the same way it would if a wild bear was confronting you. I mean, your stress at your job can cause that same reaction. So what are some of the things that that we could be doing instead of prescribing these medications? Like, and how can we logically like integrate that into the healthcare system? Because obviously it's going to be a slow process. This isn't going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Well, maybe this illustration would help answer that question. But one of the things that I ask patients is, did your doctor tell you why your blood pressure was high?
Yeah.
And
wait. So you're talking about a root cause,
a cause of high blood pressure.
What caused the blood pressure problem?
Mm-hmm.
And do the doctors answer the question?
No.
What caused?
No, they don't. And I think because of the time factor, like you said, and sticking up for them, they got a waiting room full of people who literally.
I am empathetic to their challenges.
They need to.
For sure.
Those patients need to be out there doing a little reading on their own, going to the health food store, going to the gym, eating properly and sleeping properly and having fun, doing all those lifestyle things, which would probably lower their blood pressure. But so the doctors are having to, see these patients. And so they're opting to a quick response to blood pressure. Well, blood pressure's high, let's lower it. But so my question is, why is blood pressure up? And they go, I don't know. And I said, well, next time you're with your doctor, ask, your doctor. And I've asked the doctor and they don't know why, but we just got to lower it. So I tell them, I tell them to lift up their pant legs. And they're like, what? And when they have swollen ankles, this is almost 100% of the time they have swollen ankles. This biocomputer says, oh, we got pooling in the ankles. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is we need to get that fluid back up to the heart and shunt it over to the kidneys to get the fluid out. So
it's working harder.
So the blood pressure goes up because you have swollen ankles. Why do you have swollen ankles? Well, because people aren't being active and they've gained some weight. Their calf muscles are tight. So the calf muscles get tight. Now the blood vessels can't get the blood up. So what we do is we tell them, you know what, a fix to your blood pressure problem is use this stick. It's a roller. And roll out your calves every single day for a few minutes to soften that up. And they notice their blood pressure goes down. Okay. Because now you're
That's awesome.
fixing the cause of the problem. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. It's just to be a good doctor, you go, what's the problem? Oh, you got swollen ankles. Let's fix that and see if the oil light turns off. If it does.
And this stick, is it $15,000, $20,000?
Oh, it's a whole $25 to $45 depending on the model. But yeah, it's a
right.
It'll last a lifetime.
And what are the side effects of the stick?
They're terrible. You'll have less swollen ankles. Your legs will feel better. You'll probably be able to stand on your feet longer.
Right. And
you'll be able to exercise more, which will help you sleep better at night. So lots of side effects.
And you can ward off evil people with the stick.
Yeah, and if people come in, you can whack them.
You got a self-defense tool.
So
built in.
Yeah. So I think that's I don't know if that answers your question, but it's looking for the root cause of the problem, and you need to have a doctor that's going to do that. And if you go to the doctor and say, hey, you need to have a knee replacement. So what, my right knee needs replaced. And you go, why? And I hear this all the time. Because you're getting older. And I always go, well, isn't your right knee the same age as your left knee?
Yeah.
And they go,
that's a good point.
Yeah. And so, if you question your doctor that way and they say, it's old age, how come my left knee isn't
it's
the
the
problem?
Same age, yeah.
They don't know. And usually it's a mechanical thing, which goes back to swollen ankles. Most of the time it's one versus the other. Mm-hmm. And now you're opting to have a mechanical problem, so you wear that one knee out. And
because you're favoring something else.
Because you're favoring something else. So that's what makes my job so much fun, is that it's like, okay.
It's detective work.
Yeah, you've just this health detective.
Yeah.
You got to,
you got to be curious, right?
You got to be curious and you got to have fun.
So could we say that maybe this is one takeaway from this entire thing is find a physician that is curious.
Right.
About why things are happening. Not so much telling you what's happening, which has a value.
Right.
But goes the next step and it's like, why? Okay, this is happening. We just did these tests. This is happening. Why is that happening? So that's a big deal.
That's a good lead in, because I have, I've got a segment of kind of like the Hippocratic oath that and it's actually this is from the guy. Like, there's actually a prayer associated with like the Hippocratic Oath, where
Can't do that today.
not all schools do it that way, but this was his last name, I think, is actually Lasagna, and he was the dean of the medical school at Tufts University. But there's a segment where he says, like, I will not be ashamed to say I know not, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for my patient's recovery. And, we're talking about this toolkit, and, if doctors don't have the time to do that, if the system has kind of pigeonholed them into, okay, I'll make these initial lifestyle change recommendations, and if the patient doesn't do that, then I'm going to prescribe medication, then why isn't, it's written right there. It's part of their oath, and they're not getting other experts involved in the process for the well-being of their patient. And Charlie, you would be a big part of that with nutrition, with supplementation. There's all sorts of, every drug out there is synthesized from something natural, and there are natural options that don't have the same side effects. And, Dr. Pat, you would definitely be a part of that. Chiropractic care and all the other services that you offer, they fit into that realm as well. So, I mean,
right. But do you know the one that is probably being overlooked the most? And it's probably the most important thing. And it's really the root of all these problems. We're talking about root causes. It's the patient themselves.
Oh, I know.
They, the message really has to be, look, nobody cares more about your health than you do. And your life and your body are miracles, and you have been entrusted with these miracles. And it's really up to you and you alone how you take care of those.
Yes.
And so you are the custodian of your health, and you're responsible. And with that, there's a requirement to learn what's going on and learn, and it comes down to simple things like, well, we can observe people that are healthy, and we can observe people that are sick.
Mm-hmm.
And we can start to see patterns. This is simple stuff. This isn't rocket surgery. I mean, we're talking about looking at healthy people. What do? They eat whole foods. What's a whole food? It's a food in the grocery store that doesn't have a nutrition label on it.
Your dad was talking about it earlier.
He's
Dr. Mercola, he mentioned that article, and he was saying, like, if your food has, if it takes you 30 seconds to read all the ingredients in your food, don't
know how that was made.
Don't eat
right.
it.
But an apple, you buy an apple in the grocery store, you're going to do okay. You see a piece of steak in the grocery store, you're going to do okay. You see a piece of chicken in the grocery store, you're going to do okay. You got
boxes with stuff and all these chemicals.
You stay in the perimeter of the grocery store and you eat fruits and vegetables and meats, you're going to do okay, diet-wise. But then you also look at, okay, what do healthy people do? Oh, they move their bodies. Like, death can't catch. You're harder to catch by death's sickle if you're moving. So keep moving. I mean, you can just observe that with people. You look at people that are 85 years old, there are certain 85-year-olds that could run circles around the average person of any age. And what do? Okay, let's just step back and say, okay, yeah, some people are gifted with
good genes.
They're blessed with genetics, and they have just been blessed. But at the same time, watch what they do and how they do it. They are, my mother is 75. She's out in the garden planting stuff, and she's out by 8 a.m. and she's doing stuff, and she's got a little hat on, and she's out there digging and just running around, and she's cooking food, and she's organizing things, and she's social, and she's busy. And
bodies in motion stay in motion.
Right. It's simple physics. So I got on this little digression, and I apologize for that. But it's the person in this whole thing is, the person that's responsible is is you.
No, you're 100% correct, but in the individual always has to be in charge of this process, right? I mean, do we blame, going back to the automobile analogy, do we blame the mechanic if someone doesn't bring their car in, for the proper repairs, doesn't get their oil changed and all this stuff? I mean, you don't show up to the mechanic and say, what have you done to my car? Like, no, you did that. You did that you did that to yourself regarding your health. But I do think that the message isn't explicit enough. I mean, we say that to the people we see. You say that to your patients. I mean, you told me a story about calling a patient and checking up on them to see if they were doing the thing that you recommended. I mean, do you think other doctors do that? I mean, I've never heard of such a thing.
Very few.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
And we, we always, in the health food stores, we always give lifestyle and nutrition advice when we're selling supplements. If we're selling somebody a meal replacement shake because they want to, get healthier and lose some weight, get fit. I mean, we tell them about the things that they need to be buying at the grocery store. I mean, so, I guess my frustration is that the doctor makes that suggestion, but it's a lot of times it seems very half-hearted. But if you go in when they're recommending the prescribing the drugs and you refuse those, well, it's time to go see another doctor, because now you've insulted their whatever, their ego or something. And I just think, and that's not the case all the time, but I've heard it over and over and over again. And that, I think that's a fundamental flaw in the system.
Well, the system needs to be monetized, and it's basically been created and situated as a monetization model. Okay. And let's talk about cholesterol. What is the check engine light is the cholesterol test itself.
Yeah.
That is the check engine light. And then, so they get the results of this cholesterol test, and that is the check engine light. And if it's on, and this is a binary, I mean, I always think to myself, they're talking about jobs that could be replaced with AI. Well, if doctors don't up their game, AI is just an if-then kind of thing. I mean, so if blood pressure X, drug prescription Y. I mean, it becomes a very simplistic thing if we're just using the drug model alone as a method of therapeutic intervention.
Yeah.
And let's talk about these drugs. Most of what they're doing is the cholesterol drug. I'm not real convinced that a cholesterol drug is reducing mortality from cardiovascular events. Is it lowering the cholesterol metric that they're looking at? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's unintended consequences and side effects of those drugs. People get muscle pains, and there's actually something called cardio
Myelopathy?
Yeah, where basically it's the statin depletes the CoQ10 from the heart, and the heart, basically the energy of the heart gives out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's statin-induced cardiomyopathy is what it is. Mm-hmm. And so you have these unintended consequences. The intention's good, but it's just such a simplistic.
More people are having strokes statistically on the statin, cholesterol lowering drugs. More people, is saying, hey, you better take this, statin because you're at risk for stroke. There's more people having strokes taking the prescription.
Yeah.
But you go, why? And you touched on this too, and I don't want to belabor the point, but stepping on people's toes right now, the welfare system has really deadened the population's ability to take responsibility for themselves.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And so we've created a generation or generations of people who are on welfare, and people come up against hard times. And what happens is, they lost their job, they trained in this particular industry, and we can either sign you up for welfare and you get a check every month, you get food stamps, and that's all you can do, right?
Well, is that also a check engine light turning it? I mean, that's what that system is, right? Because that doesn't fix poverty, right?
No,
it doesn't fix poverty.
But follow this. So you got your choice. So I just lost my job. This is bad. Government says we can help you out. You take the handout. So you take the handout and then it's like, oh, wow. Or you could go back to school and learn a different trade. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of work, and it's risky.
And uncertain, yeah. And scary.
Right, it's scary. So, I got to take responsibility to do this? No, I'd rather have the handout. So people get into the handout and then they get used to it. And then all of a sudden their motivation goes down. And so you take that same generation of people who go to the doctor and it's like, oh my gosh, my cholesterol's up. Yeah, well, what you can do is join a gym. And you can also go to the grocery store and buy fruits and vegetables. And you can go to the health food store and get some nutrition supplements. And you can make sure that you get to bed on time and drink plenty of fluids. Or you can take the statin drug.
Yeah.
And so it's, oh, well, I'll take so we've created, like you said, the problem is the patient. They're not taking responsibility for their own health care.
I agree.
Right. And look, to the extent that you're looking for answers outside of your own personal responsibility, I'm just going to say that that's a recipe for suffering. You're just going to suffer. It sounds good on the surface because we think about the energy outputs. But in the long run, it's a highway to hell.
Yeah. Like what people are on welfare that are traveling to Europe for 3 months. What people on welfare are, buying their dream home. What people on welfare are helping their kids get through college. What people, what I'm saying? It's like, it's nice to get that paycheck and everything, but it's a trap. It's a trap. And the statistics are once you get into the welfare system, it's very rare you get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get into the medical system, it's really difficult to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah.
So it's, so that's why these podcasts are very important because you're going to learn something.
And I do, I'm going to contradict my attitude from earlier. There are certain situations where some diagnostic work is done, something interesting or rare is found, and a nearly miraculous medical intervention can certainly be super helpful, right, and borderline life-saving or completely life-saving.
Absolutely.
But what we're looking at in the aggregate, in the big picture, is we're looking at disease processes that result from poor lifestyle decisions. Not caring for the frame, not exercising, not eating properly, not resting properly, not getting outside, not socializing, and basically living an improper, imbalanced, unnatural life. And then we have this expectation we're going to roll into the doctor and he's going to give this magic nostrum that we're going to take, and in 4 days we're going to feel magically better. It's an absurd notion. And doctors, those are lifestyle, like diabetes, most cardiovascular disease, many cancers, most inflammatory diseases are based on or aggravated, exacerbated by
poor lifestyle.
Yeah.
So the idea is become a student of a good lifestyle, and not only can you avoid those things, but if you're if you're sliding down that road and you want to stop, you can make changes and have positive results from those changes. Sure. And that's really what we're trying to. That's the message we're trying to get out to people.
Absolutely.
It costs less too.
Yeah. You guys made some good points. We got to wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think the big takeaway here is that, as guides, we need to continue to be emphatic about the individual, taking responsibility for their health. That's really important. And again, what is that? That's all about the doctor within. I mean, you kind of circled back to it, but I mean, the doctor is in you. You need to take care of yourself, use your guides, your doctors, your chiropractor, your nutritionist, your health food store, use all of that stuff. And
those are just tools. It's ultimately, only you can help your health.
Absolutely.
Ultimately.
Yep. Thanks, guys.